Hello everyone, my name is Jeanne. I was born and raised in the capital of Kazakhstan. It is located in Central Asia. Perhaps you are familiar with the local rules. When a girl meets a guy, she must be pure and innocent, and only after the wedding, her husband has the right to touch her. This is an unspoken rule. Of course, now, in the modern world, many do not adhere to this, but in my family, I was raised this way. Now, I'm even a little sorry that it happened. I was born and raised as an only child. My parents were often away at work, so I mostly lived with my grandmother. When I was growing up, my grandmother kept telling me not to rush into relationships, not to trust boys, not to be influenced, and not to drink alcohol near them. I didn't have to admit it. I had a few girlfriends, and they were all from decent families. We always went on vacation together, and I never saw one of us get drunk or behave like a pig. 2 of us had boyfriends, and they were very good guys. Then, we were 18 years old. That night, I was approached by a cute kid in a cafe, but I was so fixated on what my grandmother said that guys only need one thing that I turned him down almost immediately, although I really liked his appearance. He passed me a bouquet of flowers via the waiter and left. On the way home, the girls scolded me for being so rude to him. "What if this is your fate?" they asked. But I waved it off, saying it was nonsense. I went home, put the flowers in a vase, and fell asleep. It's been a long time since then. Guys started showing up at everyone's house except for me. Imagine, in a group of 4 girls, only I didn't have a boyfriend. I never even kissed one. By then, my girlfriends were sometimes having affairs with more than one person at a time. I was just amazed at such art. When I turned 20, this topic of love and relationships began to worry not only me, but also my mother. I wasn't defective in any way. I had a nice face and mind, and maybe my stomach was sticking out a little bit, but that's all. By the age of 25, I began to seriously dig into the reason for the lack of guys in my life. Why so? One of my friends managed to get married. A year later, the second. And the first became a mother, the third friend just basked in attention, and I complexed myself more and more. And every time I sat among them and listened to them talk about problems, new feelings, dating, first kisses, and sex, all this hurt my self-esteem. The girls complained about one goat, then another, and I didn't understand why they were saying that. "Yes, show me this goat. If he does not suit you, let me take him for myself," I wanted to scream. And after all the stormy discussions and my 2-hour silence, my friends finally remembered me and said, "How good that you do not have such problems. No man, no problem." And they laughed. Oh, I was ready to kick each of them in the face. For them, it was a harmless joke, but for me, a whole series of problems. I would go home and cry into my pillow. My grandmother didn't hear anything because she was almost deaf, and my mother wasn't around to share it. And every time I complained to my grandmother about the problem with not having a boyfriend, she said that it was okay to get married. The main thing is not to get married. But it didn't get any easier. My sense of abandonment grew. It's awful. Being alone. Everyone has a pair, at least once in their life. People fall in love, get married, and sometimes break up. All this is normal. But why does it avoid me? Ask what attempts I have made. I spent almost all of my salary on myself. I went to a salon every month, did manicures, pedicures, dyed my hair, removed excess skin, did spa treatments, bought expensive perfume, wore expensive clothes, even bought a car, took up sports and lost weight. I did not smoke and almost did not drink. In short, I tried to invest all the money I earned in myself, and still, my communication with the opposite sex did not go beyond flirting. What I couldn't understand was why guys didn't even meet me. They look at you, wink, and sometimes compliment you, but none of them even come to meet you. Why? When my third friend got married, after the wedding night, I decided to go around the city. I just called a taxi, took a bottle of champagne with me, and drank to the health of the young people all the way. Undoubtedly, I was happy for all of them. Why is this happening? The taxi driver became clearly nervous because my inappropriate behavior from the outside looked like I was saying goodbye to my life. In my desperation, I suddenly wanted to take a decisive step towards an evil fate. I asked him to leave me in the park. I didn't want to go home, where everything was boring. I didn't want to look at couples in love, and even more so, I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts in four walls. In the park, I walked until morning, in a dirty dress, a little drunk, with makeup smeared on my face. Suddenly, I met the janitor, who had already been on duty since early morning. "Jeanne, is that you?" he asked. I looked at him in surprise. It turned out to be my classmate, Daniel. I don't even know which one of us was more embarrassed. He asked me why I was like this and if I needed help. And I told him everything that had accumulated in my heart over all these years. I sobbed and screamed that I would be alone for the rest of my life. On this day, I turned 30 years old. Almost half of my life is behind me. I had my own car, apartment, and nothing else. My friends were too busy with their families, so I almost stopped talking to them. I told Daniel all this. I think if it were another person, I would still pour my heart out. He told me that in this world of billions and billions of people, it is quite possible to be alone. The words sounded like a sentence. I hailed a taxi, went home, filled the tub, and lay down, submerged in water, wanting to drown myself. But my grandmother knocked on the door and asked if everything was all right. I heard the knock and got out of the tub. "I know that look. And what about the boy who gave you those flowers?" My grandmother asked. "What flowers? The first and last time I was given them was many years ago," I said, remembering that bouquet. And Grandma said, "They're still on your desk." I frowned and said it was nonsense, but my grandmother gently patted me on the head. "Jeanne, wake up. It's time to get up." I heard a slight whisper. My eyes opened with difficulty, and the room was bright. I didn't understand what was happening. Why am I in my room? How did I get here? My grandmother looked at me and asked who this wonderful bouquet of flowers was from. I looked at the table and saw the same flowers, and in the mirror, a young self. Grandma asked if everything was all right, and I paused for a moment and said, "Yes, everything is just fine. It was a dream." I texted the kid that night, and he left the phone number in the bouquet. Whether it's fate or coincidence, I don't know. But now, I am 30 years old, and we have a family.
Hi everyone, my name is Colin. I want to tell you about my crazy period in life when I had 90 girls. It was incredibly cool, but difficult. You probably think that I'm some kind of macho or handsome or rich or both, but you're wrong. I'm a simple guy with a middle income. I'm 20 years old, I live with my parents. In addition to me and the family, there is an older sister and a younger brother. My parents love my sister most of all, because she is a hard worker. And younger son because he is the youngest. But I was loved for nothing. Yes, I grew up a blockhead, so many people tell me. I somehow finished school. I was expelled from the university. I also worked somehow. I helped my mother in her business. I never sought to win women's hearts, even though I loved girls. Well, then something in me switched. I decided to radically change my lifestyle, try something new, and joined the informal group. Remember those? Emo, punks, goths, trash, so on and so on. Well, I've got the right company. It was fun. We dressed in a certain black and pink style. The first piercings appeared on the body. Someone did tattoos. No, we didn't cut our wrists. Everything was within reason. Gradually, in our city began to organize informal gatherings, and surprisingly, there were a lot of people like us. All such gatherings were arranged in the same club. We gathered in the same place at the same time. You can't imagine the atmosphere on the dance floor, where everyone was like you, and we were all on the same wave. The girls very often looked in our direction. My friend was considered handsome, like me, only more timid. In short, it was not difficult for me to approach the girl and start a conversation. And then in an hour, I had her phone number. In 2, I could kiss her on the same dance floor. With some, there was a continuation. You know. So my friends and I hung out once a week. The circle of informals expanded more and more. We bought even more fashionable clothes, sneakers, all sorts of accessories, listened to music that made the eardrums in our ears burst and shock our hair in clubs. It was our atmosphere. Over time, such joints were organized, not only once a week, but more often. When spring came, and then summer, we walked around the city. Of course, there was a downside to the appearance. We were conspicuous. The common people did not like us. Everyone tried to kick us in the face, so it was not easy to live, but there was some charm in this. It didn't concern me. I could knock anyone out with a single blow thanks to my physical training. So with walks and acquaintances became more. Sometimes I didn't have to remember the names of the girls. Each tried to hook up with me or my friend. I wasn't as fastidious as he was. If the girl was more or less pretty, I asked her out. And as I have always noted, with the arrival of heat, the desire to have a boyfriend among girls has become more. Gradually, my phone was filled up with women's names, one after the other, and they were all completely different. Older than me, younger, thin, fat, smart, stupid, from rich and poor families. I had the same scenario. Calls, walks, cafe, movie, bed. I slept with almost everyone, and I was the first man. I didn't like to see each other for long, but I didn't like to break up either. So I chose an easy tactic. I just disappeared or behaved like a pig. In this case, the girls were not so painful to break up. Plus, they did all the work for me. It was convenient. So I went on an adventure among women's names and phone numbers. For the first 6 months, it was easy to run from one date to another, or to stay at one girl's house and talk on the phone with another while she was in the shower. I felt like a real player, an alpha male, a heartthrob. Well, then it turned into a game. I did it stupidly for the counter. Oh, I didn't say? From the first girl, I kept a notebook counter. Oh no, it was just for memory. There I described the girl, her name, and our short-term relationship, and then it became a gamble without feelings or noble principles. I picked up girls and then didn't even call back. Didn't explain anything. I didn't care anymore. And so my notebook ended at the number 90. The year was almost over. I had 90 girls. I broke all my friends' records, and suddenly, I wasn't that interested. And I came up with a specific idea to play on feelings. I wanted the 91st girl to complete the year, but she was not just another girl. She fell in love with me completely and irrevocably. Her name was Annelle. I met her by chance in a supermarket. She wasn't my type in black clothes and lots of piercings. She was from a good family, very well-mannered, erudite, and cultured. She was buying groceries at home, and at that moment I went to the market for a mineral water. I had a terrible headache after drinking alcohol the day before, so I accidentally pushed her cart and apologized. She made a face of displeasure, but accepted the apology with a nod of her head. I immediately liked this look. 100% bitch. I challenged myself with a hangover. She's my 91st girl. It seemed easy to do this, given that the new year was approaching. Gifts and the mood itself was becoming romantic. Annelle avoided me for a long time. After shopping, I followed her and saw that she lived nearby. At first, I even wondered why she was acting like this. Did she not like me? This can't be happening. I went to her door every day and waited for her to come out. Then asked her to leave her phone number and agree to dinner. To be honest, she made me sweat a lot. I've been chasing her for almost 3 fucking weeks. I was already getting angry that she wasn't available. Well, then I went to concrete measures. I rang her doorbell, her mother opened it, I held out flowers and asked to call Annelle. She left simply taken back by the impudence. Look, if you think you can just break into my house and get my parents and ask them to call me, you're wrong. People like you are not for me, so please leave, she said. I didn't prepare an answer to that. And then realizing, I made a condition. If you go on a date with me, I'll leave you alone, I said. If you don't, I'll keep coming to you. She didn't even agree. I was happy, really. I hurried home and arranged a romantic date, which is not like me at all. My friend who lived in a high-rise building had access to the roof. So we set up a small Christmas tree up there and decorated the area with garlands. Annelle was shocked, but she liked it. I knew that something special had to be prepared for her. After she made a wish, I took her to a nice coffee shop where we had pumpkin soup. All evening we laughed and chatted. It was wonderful. Annelle looked especially beautiful that night, even in her hat. At the end of the evening, she thanked me and gave me a kiss. I don't know why, but for the first time I felt an unaccustomed tremor in my body. I was as excited as a little boy, and at the same time I was really happy for the first time. Annelle and I fell in love. In a couple of weeks, we were supposed to celebrate the new year. I was preparing to introduce her to friends, but her parents found out about us and were against it. And no matter how stubborn I was, no matter how much I said I didn't care what they thought, she couldn't go against their decision. When we parted, I felt another new feeling: pain and regret. This is how I met the new year, with a broken heart, alone. We never saw each other again. I heard she left. Sometimes when I think of her, I feel terribly bad, but she was the best of almost 100 girls and has remained so.